floor is open for discussion.
So I would like to start with your first question you arose. Are there authoritarian structures still in Germany? That was your introductory question. And I would answer yes, of course, there are, but maybe not so dominant as a dominant social character orientation. I think the whole description you gave is very convincingly, but the question would be more, is this all really authoritarian? And is this all dominant? Is this all due to a dominant social character orientation? There is no doubt that there are social and professional groups where authoritarianism still is more relevant as in other groups. For instance, on the lower levels of military organization, we have still a strongly military authoritarian structure. Or in churches, in religious sects, we have very authoritarian orientations. In political groups, right, also sometimes in left political groups, we have a lot of authoritarianism. Or, for instance, at court, where the law is administered, we have a lot of authoritarianism and hierarchy. Or think of the jail and what is going on in jail. You have a deep authoritarian structure still. So in these groups, you have, so to speak, a dominant authoritarian organization and structure, also from a more social psychological point of view. I think what you presented here was a very convincingly general overlook on a misuse of power, one could say, where power is used as a power over instead of power to. I think we all need authority, we all need power. Gerd Meyer stressed this point yesterday. But the question is how this power, how authority really is used. And I would like to use the opportunity here to a more social psychological point of view, and especially because authoritarianism originally was observed and developed as a character orientation by Erich Fromm. Fromm was the inventor. Fromm invented the concept of authoritarian character in the early 30s. And if one looks at the phenomena that were presented by Dr. Brindoepke, some of the examples can be attributed to other basic strivings and not to authoritarianism. We would have to discuss it in detail. But let me say a little bit about what, in a strict sense, in a strict social psychological and psychoanalytical sense, authoritarianism means. And because this would also be an explanation of what you were asking, namely the explanation of fascism. What is the explanation of fascism? And I think the authoritarian character concept developed by Fromm is quite a most interesting explanation of the fascistoid or fascistic phenomena. Now, the very particular understanding of authority in authoritarianism is that power is a leading principle to structure organization, to be related to others, and to be related to oneself. In all these relations and structures, authority is the leading principle and power over is a leading principle. Erich Fromm's particular contribution to this concept was that he explained the psychodynamic of this very particular orientation in society and within each individual. He explained the psychodynamic as a symbiosis of rulers and people who want to be ruled, or to put it in psychoanalytic terms, to organize relationship to others and to oneself by sadistic and masochistic strivings, or simply by feelings of power over others and feelings of impotence, of inferiority and powerlessness by those who like to be submitted to power. For Fromm, the decisive essential of authoritarianism is first, that power is used not as power to, but as power over. And second, that there is a symbiotic dependency of the ones who play the part of having and executing power and the ones who play the part of submitting and being obedient to authority. The feature of symbiosis, Fromm explained by a mutual projection. That is to say, that people in power project their own feelings of impotence and powerlessness to those who want to rule, control, and have power over. At the same time, the ones who submit to authority in a symbiotic way project their feelings of their own faculties and powers, namely their wisdom, their love, their power to defend themselves, and so on, they project to authority. So we have a mutual projection. And thus, the authority is the owner of these powers, and the one who submits to authority can participate in his own powers by submitting under the authority. The same alienating or the same alienation of aspects of oneself happens on the side of the authority. The authority projects his own feelings of weakness, of powerlessness, of impotence, of guilt, of being ashamed, of impotence, and so on, to the ones who are submitted to him, and uses his sadistic strivings to keep all these unloved feelings over there. In those people, he can control and have power over. Now, to come back to the presentation of Dr. Brindoepke, after this focusing on the psychodynamics of authoritarianism, I think there is no doubt that still authoritarianism plays a role also in Germany. But it lacks very often this symbiotic quality of sadism and masochism. And therefore, if this is lacking in a strict sense, from the Frommian point of view, in a strict sense, one should not speak of authoritarianism. You see, there are other forms of power, and it should be explained by other psychological concepts than authoritarian personality. You mentioned necrophilic attitudes, and I think this is another concept. So let's put it this way. I would agree in general to most what you described, but I would give some of these phenomena you mentioned, I would give them another background, another psychological explanation. I would not contribute or attribute this phenomena to fascism and to authoritarianism. That would be, so to speak, my critique on it. Thank you.
Thank you.